No one expected this from Trump, nuclear ashes instead of Russia. A crucial decision has already been made. US nuclear facilities are ready to strike Russian territory. Ships are already moving into position. Details coming up.
The threat of nuclear war has knocked on Russia's door at the invitation of Dmitry Medvedev. Donald Trump has sent a clear signal to Putin: with the current US president, nuclear blackmail will not work.
In response to the extremely provocative statements made by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be deployed to the appropriate areas in case these foolish and provocative statements turn out to be more than just words.
To underscore the seriousness of his intentions, in an interview with American media, the head of the White House first declared Washington's readiness for nuclear war with Moscow.
The former president of the Russian Federation started talking about nuclear weapons. And when it comes to nuclear weapons, we must be prepared. And we are fully prepared.
He then confirmed that US nuclear submarines have been deployed to the shores of Russia.
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said some very bad things talking about nuclear weapons. He has said things like that before, so we must always be prepared. And that's why I sent nuclear submarines to the region. I just want to make sure that his words are just words and nothing more. Have they moved closer to Russia? Yes, they have moved closer to Russia.
And here, Putin's former placeholder in the Russian presidential seat miscalculated. Unlike most politicians, for Donald Trump, social media is the main battleground for both politics and business.
Iran and Israel need to make a deal, and they will, just as I made India and Pakistan make one, this time using trade with the US to bring reason, unity, and sanity to the negotiations.
What most people see as drunken rambling from the drunkard Medvedev, for the US president is a reason to increase pressure and escalate.
Medvedev shot himself in the foot, but it's not even so much himself as the Russian Federation as a whole. He nullified all the previous decades of efforts by the Russian Federation at the very moment of nuclear blackmail by the occupying country against the United States and NATO countries. The United States essentially utilized the rhetoric and the very language of the Russian Federation, specifically aggressively rattling its nuclear weapons against Russia itself. A truly provocative and dangerous act. This is called mirroring.
In essence, a strategic shift has occurred in the relationship between Russia and the Western world.
The likelihood that Putin will start a nuclear war is much higher than many are willing to admit. It's a good thing that Donald Trump saw through the Russian regime. What's much worse is that nuclear policy is being dictated by messages on social media.
For all these decades, Russia's nuclear saber rattling has essentially been a kind of demonstrative rhetoric aimed at exerting informational and political pressure on Western countries to show Russia's resolve in the event of possible use of nuclear weapons. That's what this is about. This is what the entire foreign policy of the Russian Federation was based on.
Previously, the Russian dictator's trump card, nuclear blackmail, worked on both Europeans and the American administrations of Obama and Biden.
The aggressor must still know that retribution is inevitable, that he will be destroyed. And well, we are the victims of aggression, and we, as martyrs, will go to heaven, while they will simply die.
Now, however, Trump's actions and statements have shown that any further attempts by Russia to play with the atomic bomb will primarily bring nuclear clouds over Moscow and the Kremlin.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
It's begun. Trump has decided to finish off Russia. Urgent official statement from the US State Department standing side by side with Ukraine until the end. China has unexpectedly spoken out. Russia's capitulation? Special envoy Vitkoff is flying to Moscow for a reason. Everything will be over soon. And will Trump bend the US to his will as well? The answer will shock you.
US President Trump reminded everyone that this Friday marks the end of the 10 days given to Putin, and Special Envoy Vitkoff will be heading to Russia in the coming days. Moscow had strongly requested his visit.
Yes, there will be sanctions. But it seems they're pretty good at avoiding them. You know, they're cunning characters and they're good at dodging sanctions. But we'll see what happens. Steve, I think, will head to Russia this week on Wednesday or Thursday. They would like to see him. They requested a meeting with him, so we'll see.
This is precisely an attempt by the Kremlin to keep playing this game in which they lead the American administration by the nose, constantly promising some results in the peace process or at least a freeze of the war, while in reality they continue trying to seize Ukrainian territories and constantly carry out terrorist attacks on Ukrainian cities.
The Russian authorities have still not commented on Trump's statement about moving nuclear submarines in response to the nuclear threats made by an intoxicated Medvedev, and the federal TV channels didn't even mention the statement.
I have already made a statement. There was a threat from Russia, and I considered it inappropriate. And the answer is this: the nuclear submarines are already in that region where they are supposed to be.
At this point, it's more of a PR move by the American president. It's a reaction to Medvedev's words, who frankly isn't taken seriously, not just in the West, but even within the Russian political establishment. Therefore, I think that in this context, Russia is trying not to escalate and not to give Trump more reasons to take tougher actions against the Russian Federation.
In addition, Trump continues to put pressure on Russia's main economic allies. The Trump administration has already directly accused India of financing the war against Ukraine.
President Trump made it very clear that it is unacceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India, in fact, depends on China and on buying Russian oil.
As for India, politically, they do indeed belong more to the Western world. And the significant influence of the United States on India remains remarkably persistent, consistently stable, abundantly clear, and quite tangibly evident. Therefore, regarding secondary sanctions and India's participation in trade with the Russian Federation, such a move by the Trump administration could indeed affect the economic relationship between India and Russia.
The question regarding China remains open. The Middle Kingdom does not want to give up Russian oil. Western analysts claim that if China believes Trump will not back down from his intention to impose secondary sanctions and at the same time will increase military support for Ukraine, this could make the Chinese reconsider.
I think these will be 100% secondary tariffs. We expect that most of the Western alliance supporting Ukraine will follow this example, and anyone who buys Russian oil under sanctions should be prepared for this. The Chinese take their sovereignty very seriously. We do not want to infringe on their sovereignty. So if they want to pay a 100% tariff, let them pay.
Yes, from an economic logic standpoint, it is of course much more beneficial for China to trade with the United States than to support Russia. At this point, yes, we can say that China has largely dropped its mask and is now openly stating that it will not let Russia lose this war. Therefore, I wouldn't draw any definitive conclusions yet about how effective American sanctions against Chinese companies might be, or whether, in this case, political logic from Beijing will outweigh economic benefit.
It seems that Trump is increasingly shifting from neutrality to supporting Ukraine. The US State Department has stated that America remains a reliable ally of Ukraine.
This administration is striving for a long-term, durable, and sustainable peace in the region. We want to continue standing side by side with Ukraine as Ukraine calls for a comprehensive and complete ceasefire that will stop any attacks on the civilian population and critical infrastructure.
But despite all the threats, according to statements made in the Kremlin recently, what Putin wants from Ukraine is capitulation, and he will not agree to a compromise.
As for any disappointments from anyone, all disappointments arise from excessive expectations. This is a well-known general rule.
It's interesting to consider just how far Putin is willing to go. After all, of course, sanctions mean nothing to him personally. It will be ordinary people who suffer from the dictator's unreasonable decisions, those very people who support him.